Hello, everyone, and welcome to Learn Plus. My name is Brenda Bailey Hughes, and I am thrilled to be here with you today. I'm coming in from Bloomington, Indiana, which is about 4 hours south of Chicago. Chicago's frequently called the Windy City, but the Windy City has nothing on me today. We have high windstorm warnings happening here. Things are flying everywhere, and I am just keeping my fingers crossed that the internet holds for the next 40 minutes or so while we chat about icebreakers. Um, you may have seen that LinkedIn has recently put out a report of a survey that they conducted identifying the most in demand skills for 2023. Right up there at the top were management, communication, and also in the top 10 is teamwork. And learning icebreakers with our guest today is going to help us excel in all of those arenas: communication, management, teamwork, and so many other spaces about building relationships. Our guest today is Carolyn Goerner. Dr. Goerner is a colleague of mine at the Kelley School of Business, where we both teach at Indiana University. She is a LinkedIn author as well. In fact, she and our friend and colleague, Dr. Daisy Lovelace, have a class about icebreakers in the library that I encourage you to follow up and watch if you haven't already seen it as prep for coming into today. Carolyn is a delightful friend, an engaging colleague. She focuses in areas like women and leadership, negotiations. Her PhD was at Ohio State, although she did her communication degree master's here at Indiana University. And then she got wise and came back from Ohio State to Indiana University, where she teaches in our management and entrepreneurship department now. She's an active person in her community. She sits on the boards of a leadership community building leadership group. She is active in local theaters and makes time to travel the world for great shows and great theater. I think you're going to love meeting Dr. Carolyn Goerner. So, Carolyn, are you here? Let's bring Carolyn in. I see. Look at this. Look where all our friends are from, Carolyn. We've got friends here from the UK, Atlanta,
Love it.
Brazil, Argentina.
I apparently have frozen.
There, can you see me? Am I back?
Looks good to me. I think we're there.
The power went out. It's coming back on. I see it. I think I'll be back up and running in just a minute here.
Oh, dear.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Well, I'm not seeing others, but so I hate to talk over them in case Carolyn's talking and I'm talking over her. So I can see myself, but I can't see Carolyn or
Can you hear me?
any of the comments,
No.
but that's all right. I think everything's coming back up. So Carolyn, if you're there, I'm just going to assume you're talking about the characteristics of high performance teams, and I'll be quiet and let you continue on.
Don't you love just getting the perfect segue into something, even when the person who doesn't know they're giving it to you? That is a mark of pure talent, my friends. When we talk about high performing teams, one of the things that they need to be able to do is have a good fight. I know that sounds a little counterintuitive, but the idea is that when a team is really performing well, they are very much in a groove where they can productively disagree. They can have conversations where respectfully they can try someone's idea, say maybe it didn't work, and then come back and try something else. They also are able to evaluate their process without ego, which is really hard. All of that takes a great deal of psychological safety. And so fundamentally, what we are trying to do with a team that is coming together and is going to try to do its best work is that team really has to come to a place where they understand each other, know how each other communicates, and have a sense of vulnerability and safety with one another so that they can have good conversations. Now, most of the time, what happens with teams is we're polite. We will have the kind of conversation that allows us to, kind of get through enough. So what is it that you're interested in, or what is it that you might what is it that you might want to contribute to the team? But we do that in a very kind of stuffy way, if you will. And yeah, we can accomplish things, we can get stuff done, but we don't really bring out the best in each team member, and we don't really get to the point where we can say, all right, now I know that this person's contributing well. The other piece that often is missing for our day-to-day kinds of teams is this idea of team identity and potency. And identity is, I'm a member of this team. I feel connected to these people, and that's a big deal. Potency is the idea that I feel like the team as a whole can succeed. At my local high school, there's a cheer they do that is, I believe that we will win. And that's team potency, right? In a nutshell, that's essentially what it is. And so the other kind of key to this whole thing with identity and with potency is that team members need to feel not only just connected, it's not enough just to have fun with each other, but they need to believe in the strengths. So if we've got a team that has some safety, that feels like they can productively disagree, if we've got a team that has identity where they feel like they're really coming together and they believe that they are dependent on each other in some really positive way, if they have potency, I believe that we will win. And if they really have a sense of the strengths that everybody's bringing to the table, then the team has a much higher chance of not just performing, but performing really well, and for everybody to be super satisfied and maybe even want to be on the team again.
Love it. Love it. Don't you love that I invite Carolyn to be my guest and then my power goes out and I disappear on her? But like the true pro that she is, she just rolls with it. I love it. Love it. Love it. Carolyn, thank you so much. That's great.
Yeah, so I mean, I think actually, I think the fact that we had a freeze on a computer is very appropriate for icebreakers.
Why is that?
Because it's those kinds of awkward moments that actually are the things that are going to make this more memorable. So the next time I see you and we get to hug each other, we're going to have a good laugh and say, "Oh, we did this happened. This was funny. We had this shared experience," right? And a lot of that is kind of what icebreakers do is they make the team just have these experiences even if they're a little funky or they're, like what vegetable are you, right? So even if we're doing something where nobody really gets the point, at least the team then has something to laugh about. So the next time they see each other, it's, oh, I remember that your favorite dance is the hustle or whatever it might be.
Those
And
shared realities, whatever those are.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's that's why so many people go to the let's just do something funny and memorable, right? It's also a shared misery thing sometimes.
Joy says she agrees. She uses Zoom technical issues as great icebreakers. I love that. So all of you that are thinking about what makes a high performance team, you've heard some of Carolyn's thoughts and that, which is very based in the research on teams. I'm just curious what all of you think of when you think of high performance teams. What are some of those characteristics that jump out to you? You can chat that to us so we start seeing what you think about, or when you think about the team that you've served on that both was as Carolyn was saying, was a joy to be a part of, but also got stuff done. They got stuff done well. They had great performance. What was it about that team that set it apart from other teams you may have been on or may have led, where they had maybe one or the other, they got stuff done, but it was miserable, or they had a great time, but they didn't get anything done? Or maybe, I hope not, but maybe you've been on a team that really didn't have either of those identifying characteristics.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm loving Will's psychological safety comment. Hi, Will, by the way, because that's a big one. It's the idea that I've got to feel like I can say, "Hey, I don't know how to do this," and have that be okay. Or I can just, ask a question about what we're doing and about our process, and have people not take it so personally that we then have a big disagreement. I love that, and
Yeah,
that's
I'm seeing a lot of respectful,
absolutely.
able and willing to bring concerns to the rest of the team. And
Yep.
I think, I mean, that is one of the quintessential definitions of psychological safety that Will mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. And, oh, I love this. They work together to ensure everyone shines. They've got each other's
Oh,
backs.
yes. Boy, is Carolyn a great
Wonderful.
example of that today. She's making my Learn Plus run. She's making it shine even when my
Oh, babe,
power is
making you
flickering.
shine is easy peasy. Let's just put it out there.
No fear of making mistake or asking for help. Thank you,
Right.
Mackenzie. That one's great. Encourages and inspires
Yeah.
creativity, blame free. Yeah, that doesn't mean we don't talk about problems,
Mhm.
because we do, and we do want to identify what happened and how we make sure that errors don't happen again. But that's different than blame. And I think, Mohammed's
Yep.
really got his
Yep.
finger on that one for sure. Challenge each other.
Yep.
Hilda.
I love it. I
Yeah,
love
these
it.
are great. These are awesome. So, how do icebreakers, Carolyn, get us to all of these great attributes of the high performance team?
Well, I get to be a real nerd for a minute here and take you back to one of my very favorite movies, which is Shrek. And
Wait a
do
minute, is that
you
like the animated thing with the green
Yep,
monster?
that's Shrek,
Okay,
the
all
little
right,
green ogre,
I'm
and
tracking.
Donkey, his sidekick. And in the very first Shrek movie, there's this lovely conversation where Shrek says that ogres are like onions, they have layers. And Donkey tries to tell him, no, you should be a parfait because they have layers, but people like them. And Shrek is insistent that no, ogres are like onions. And it turns out that that's actually very consistent with one of my favorite theories called social penetration theory. In fact, they even use an onion. And the idea is that we get to know each other in stages, in layers, if you
Like
will.
the onion. Okay.
Exactly. And so at first we do so hi, how's the weather? And
Right.
then we may look for something in common, right? So you're from Chicago, White Sox or Cubs.
Cubbies fan, right.
Yeah. And then we get a little more, oh, so tell me about your family. And so as we work through those layers, a couple of different things happen. First, we just get more comfortable with each other, right? We just are, it becomes easier to talk to you. I learn your speech patterns. That it just becomes more comfortable. And with each layer, as long as we're sort of reciprocally removing them, we develop this sense of trust. And if we look at, trust is a willingness to be vulnerable, right? And
Yeah.
so we start to get into some of your work, and actually one of my favorite LinkedIn classes of yours that talks about this notion of now it's easier for us to trust one another, not even so much because of what we've said, but because we've worked through some of the layers together. And it's
And I love that you pointed out that we're reciprocally
yeah,
removing those layers of the onion. So if I'm willing to share with you a little bit more about myself, my work preferences, what really doesn't work for me professionally, what's going to be a problem for me, and I'm not getting any of that back,
right.
that's not really social penetration, is it?
Exactly. And that's why with icebreakers, there's almost a compulsion for people to participate. And so the whole idea of, yeah, I mean, you may feel a little silly when someone says, what vegetable are you going to be? But the idea of just having to go through that process and disclose with everyone else is a big piece of how that comes together.
Absolutely. I had heard some mixed research on not necessarily icebreakers, but um, almost forced socialization where
Yeah.
people have to go out together. You know, there are these corporate retreats, and we're all going to go together. And I think that I'm going to say two things about that. One, because I saw that mixed research, I thought, oh no, maybe icebreakers don't work here. I've been trying to use them. I intuitively it makes sense to me that people are going to get along better as they know better one another better, that we're going to get past some of those hurdles. But one of the pieces of research that I really hold on to was Michael Norton out of Harvard
Oh,
Business
yeah.
Review. He
Mhm.
studied 221
Yeah.
people. It was this fun. I would love to have been a part of this
Oh,
experiment.
yeah.
So basically, what he had them do, everybody, was a scavenger hunt on campus. And they were supposed to find certain things all over campus and then take a selfie with their group. So half of the group beforehand had to do a little silly icebreaker together. And it was ridiculous. Like they stomped their feet and said their names or something. It was so
Mhm.
corny, so cheesy. And then the other group, just before the activity started, they just read an article. That
Right.
was no icebreaker, really, just kind of individually read an article. Then everybody goes off in their teams to do the scavenger hunt. The teams that had to do the silly icebreaker called it cheesy, probably rolled their eyes, probably groaned while they did their
Mhm.
stomp their feet, clap their hands, say their name, cheer thing. They found more selfies, so their
Yeah.
performance was higher because that was what performance was qualified as in this. They found them faster, their completion
Mhm.
times were faster. And then in a post survey, they said they liked each other more. So they
Mhm.
enjoyed the whole experience more. When I read that, I'm like, there it is. The data supports icebreakers, whether we hate them or not.
Well,
They work.
it's funny, there's something really similar in negotiation that they did with, law schools and business schools through, I think it was University of Chicago, Harvard, Northwestern, if I'm not mistaken. But the idea was that half of the group who was gonna negotiate with someone they never met, was just sent in to do the negotiation. The other half had a quick phone call before they interacted, and they were told to talk about really random stuff. And the topic that sticks in my mind is potato chips. Right? What do you like? What kind of potato chips do you like? And the fundamental outcome was so similar to that. The teams that talked about potato collaborative outcomes were more likely to even reach agreement, and when they did, their agreements had more shared value. So absolutely psychologically the same piece, and I just love that.
Yeah, yeah. So icebreakers work. So in our learners here that are with us today, how many of you roll your eyes and say, "Oh, it's cheesy" when it's time for the icebreaker? How many of you are like, "Yeah, I can see the value of an icebreaker"? I'm assuming we have a very skewed result on this because you came
Probably.
to a session about icebreakers, so you're probably a lover or a hater of these things. But or maybe a better question is, how many of you are regularly using icebreakers right now for new teams or not so new teams, which I think is some of the really interesting part of Carolyn and Daisy's course, is that they shape icebreakers to be not just something for the new team or the new
Right.
teammate, but for teams in lots of different Purposes. Yeah, here Shandar loves doing icebreakers.
Yep.
Great. Totally see the value, Natasha says. Totally see the, yeah, lots all the time. Susan's using them. Okay, so we've got some people using icebreakers. This
Mhm.
is great. And Derek, I think we love icebreakers, all introverts. I think that might be sarcasm, but we're going to take it. I don't know. Derek, was that a little bit sarcasm there? Most introverts are the first ones to get the shivers when they have to do
Yep.
icebreakers. Yeah,
Yep.
okay, so we have some great, okay, good. So we're not on an uphill battle here. So many groups that we work with, it's like, oh, we have to convince you that
Mhm.
icebreakers have value before we can talk about it. But Carolyn, maybe you could speak a little bit more to the different types of icebreakers you would use for different purposes, that it's not just
Absolutely.
new teams. That I thought was really interesting.
Absolutely. First of all, just finding connection around a topic is a one thing that we might do. So to get people started thinking about the topic at hand. So I actually use these at the beginning of a lot of classes when we have multiple sessions. And so call it the question of the day. So if we're talking about centralization versus decentralization of authority, right? I'll ask people, would you rather be an expert at just this small thing, or would you rather have a lot of broad knowledge, know a little bit about a lot of different things, right? And kind of get them in that mindset. So it's a nice way to kind of provide a transition into a meeting by just asking people to do that. It also becomes a ritual, and it kind of signals, all right, it's time for us all to settle in now and have that kind of conversation. So even something that one of the boards I'm on, we kind of go around and do a why are we here moment at the end. So it's kind of a reverse icebreaker, but it's, what is it about being on this team or with this group that's meaningful to me? And it's really become an important ritual with that group. So that helps. And ironically, the groups that tend to perform the best have norms and rituals that work for them. And of course, then the icebreakers reinforce that. What also happens is sometimes a group can just keep doing things the same way. And so giving them things that provoke creativity can be really helpful. And it can be here's your macaroni and your marshmallow and build something up. Or it can be something like, here's some word problems. Here's an object, which team can come up, which sub team can come up with the most different ways to use it. If so those are just really quick kind of creativity pieces. So and one of my favorites is, if we didn't have one key piece of our equation, what would we do? So did one with a team of advisors the other day, and it was, if we didn't have if all of our computers went down, what
Stay in
would
the
we
middle of
do?
a live
In the
stream.
middle of a live. Yeah. So, but what would we do? And the point was to get them away from this idea of, well, here's just all of the things we could do and you could figure out online, and to really get at, what are the conversation with the advisors supposed to be like, right? Beyond all of this technical
Right.
stuff. And so it's a way to kind of get people to think differently about their tasks, which is
Can
helpful too.
And I'm just thinking, can you imagine if pre-COVID and pre all the supply chain issues that essentially blew up in our faces, if we'd already been playing games like, hey, what if we were
Mhm.
missing this one key part of our entire chain? What would we do? And just forcing that conversation, both to spur creativity, but also to actually be in that sort of problem solving mode. So
Mhm.
yes, Carol, the session is being recorded, so you can hop back in. I missed the beginning too because my power went out, so I'm going to go back and rewatch too. Alice is asking, Carolyn, were there a small team? Can
Mhm.
icebreakers be used for like trust, maybe even with sales prospects?
Obviously, you can't sit them down and say, let's throw a beach ball at each other and, where'd your thumb land, and answer that question. Most sales prospects don't know you well enough for that. Kind of depends on how much trust has been developed. Now, that being said, one of the things that often works to develop relationships, as opposed to just transactional sales, is to make it a point to get to know the person. And so it can often be just, something like, let's go experience something together. I mean, that's why, let's go to the theater, let's go to a sports event, dinner. That's kind of why those make sense, right? But then there's also just do we have something that we uniquely know we have in common that we can talk about? And so, especially if you're working remotely, even just having your people have stuff so that folks can see to comment on. I mean, Maya Angelou, as you can kind of see behind me here, is I'm inspired every time I even think the name. And so a lot of the conversations that I have will start with people either wanting to know what about Maya or why Maya, or they want to know about the rotary telephone that I still have. Um, yeah, and so just providing visual cues sometimes to get people started in conversation can be a
Right.
way to do that.
Yeah.
It's almost as if people can envelop a style that starts with the small talk as opposed to just diving into the business.
Mm-hmm.
And those become psychologically icebreakers as long as we're consistent and we make that part of our ritual with that prospect or with that new person.
Well,
So
and
that can be helpful.
depending on where you're from and where your sales prospects are from, culturally, that desire for getting to know you first, I get to know you so that we can work together, is prioritized in that fashion. Now, other
Yep.
cultures, North America, where I'm from, we tend to work together in order to get to know one another. But that's
Mhm.
not the same globally. And this is a very international group
Mhm.
that's online with us, a very
Yep.
global group. So we have to be sensitive to that need to connect in that way. I think
Mhm.
another reason I love icebreakers, Carolyn, is you'd mentioned that sort of more traditional ways of getting to know our sales prospects are we take them to dinner, or I would even say within teams that I'd mentioned, that they maybe do an offsite, they go golfing together, they go out for drinks
Mhm.
together. But in a world where we're really striving for inclusivity, I
Yes.
recognize how
Yes.
exclusive many of those outside activities can be. I don't golf. So now suddenly I'm not part of this team. I'm not there for all the connections. Maybe I don't have the money or the time or the
Mhm.
resources to go out for a drink after work. I've got
Right.
uh, family responsibilities I need to get home to. But an icebreaker that's happening as a part of the
Mhm.
already sanctioned workspace and work time, I think brings that whole team together. I love the inclusiveness of
Me too.
these.
And interestingly, for inclusion, one of my very favorite icebreakers to do is around food. And so asking people, so what food reminds you, what's your comfort food? What food reminds you of home? What food? And it's just a very nice way for people to be able to share something from their culture and people are often very interested. Oh my goodness, what's that? How do I make that? That sounds amazing.
Send us the
And
recipe.
seriously. And so food often becomes a very easy way to
Yeah,
get
I like
everyone
that. You
involved.
mentioned
Yeah.
the visual cues. One of my frequent virtual, when I'm doing remote meetings,
Mhm.
icebreakers is find an object that you can grab in 30 seconds and come back,
Yes.
pick an object that means it's significant to you and tell us why.
Yes.
And oh my goodness, like you said, I learn about people's author preferences when they grab a
Mhm.
book or a piece of jewelry that they grabbed that their grandmother gave them. Just such
Yep.
such cool stories come out when that happens.
There's
Um,
another one people can do in person, which is something you're wearing and why it matters.
oh yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I heard that one in the class, and at first I was like, my clothes are so boring. But then there was a jewelry example, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I wear my mother's engagement ring, and there's
Mhm.
so much story. I would love to, like there's a story there.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
Mackenzie said she works with a group of older men. I'm not. I'm
Mhm.
not going to ask Mackenzie to identify older because I'm probably older from Mackenzie's
Yep.
world. And she's wondering if icebreakers work with some groups and not others. And I think that the very next comment under that, Mackenzie, might be a great suggestion that maybe with groups that seem a little skeptical, maybe you don't call it an icebreaker.
Right.
You call it a warm up. We're going to have a data discussion, so we're going to warm up. Who's going to
Mhm.
be who's going to have an issue with a warm-up conversation that gets us into the data? So that
Mhm.
may be one way to approach it a little bit. Any
Mhm.
other thoughts on facilitating skeptical groups, Carolyn? Have you run into skeptical groups? What
Oh,
do you do with
all the
it?
time, all the time. One of the things is to make sure that anything you're asking at the beginning somehow feels relevant to them. And I've also, and I saw someone who mentioned this in the comments as well. If you know you have folks who are going to be particularly recalcitrant, have a conversation with them beforehand and explain why we're doing this, and maybe ask them what would be helpful for us all to know before we move into this, and see if that, see if we can make that happen. Often it's about the questions that get asked. And so people don't want to, I don't want to tell you what I'm going to do this weekend, maybe because I'm not going to do anything that I'm going to lay around and eat Fritos. I don't know. But the whole idea of kind of the stereotypical questions often can be very exclusive, and so, or excluding rather. So tell us about a recent win that Sandra just popped up with. That's really nice. Tell us about a recent win is lovely.
Yeah.
Also, let's get out. One of my favorites is, okay, let's get out first. I want all the reasons why what we're about to talk about today won't work. Let's just get them all out right now.
Just surface a lot of the skepticism, get it out there.
Absolutely. Let's get it all out of here. All right. Now, assuming everything on that list is true, we're still charged with doing it. We're smarter than that list. Let's go. And so sometimes just calling it, what is it about I literally at one point, and I'm not going to tell you it worked great, but it helped. I did ask the question of a group. So I want everybody to tell me what they hate about icebreakers.
So instead of fighting the resistance, you just leaned right into it.
Yeah. Okay.
Resistance to icebreakers, resistance to all the skepticism about the topic to come. You hit with that. What are all the reasons what we're going to talk about won't work? You hit them both.
Yeah. But tell me I want to know the worst icebreaker you've ever experienced. That's a good one too.
Oh, wow. And then do that one. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, and the key to, I think, a lot of these is that you're really trying to kind of get people to relax a little bit. And if I'm being really frank, nothing relaxes us more quickly than laughing.
Yeah. Oh, so true.
And so, you don't want to be at somebody. It needs to be a shared laugh. But to the extent that we can get there, it's a tension breaker. And especially for, like a quick stand-up meeting or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, so you'd mentioned talking to the person who's maybe a little more resistant about an icebreaker offline before the icebreaker, getting some input on what might help. I like Will's comment here that another good reason to send an icebreaker out in advance, if there's not a surprise element to it, is that those of us who need some internal processing time before we're at our best, get a chance to think through the questions and participate more fully then. I think that's a great piece.
I love that idea. Yeah, absolutely.
Gabriella is organizing a gathering for an existing team. Carolyn, you've got a group coming in where you're doing some organizing of an existing team. Now, I don't know how big yours is, Gabriella. Listen to Carolyn's group. She's got 200 people she's managing at this event.
So I've got a group of 200 coming in to campus, and they'll be doing a little less than a week-long immersion project for our online MBA program. And so I thought
online MBA program that's #1 in the world. By the way.
That would be the Kelly Direct program that's on. Yeah, okay, we're not proud or anything. It's awesome. Thank you. I always forget to do that piece. So when people come to campus, many of them have had classes with each other, but we can't guarantee that. So some of them know each other, some of them don't. And they've been randomly assigned to teams. And so my job in this little 2-hour thing that I have at the very beginning is they will just have sat down at a table with their teams. Some people on the team may know each other and some people may not, which may seem like, oh, that's a nice step in the right direction. But I realized that candidly, especially for a short period of time, that can be a recipe for disaster, because I don't want my teams to be cliques of people who already know each other and exclude people who haven't had classes with them.
Right. It completely annihilates the whole purpose of an icebreaker to begin with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I had to think about what are my goals here, and the real goals are, I want them to understand and to appreciate each other's strengths, which of course means they have to find out what those are, and then they have to kind of figure out how to associate those with each other. I need them to very quickly do something that requires the whole group. So they really need to learn an interdependence on each other, and learn that that's going to be pretty safe. I really, obviously just comfort with one another, but they're coming in to do a case project. And so problem solving, finding answers, all of those are things that I very much want them to be ready to do as well. So what they're going to do, I'll tell you how it works in a couple of weeks. But I've kind of put together a hodgepodge of different things for different reasons, right? So the first thing, of course, that they'll do is just a quick introduce yourselves, make sure, and whose birthday is closest to today. Just kind of those quick, where'd you come from? Kinds of things, right? So that everybody has to go through.
We're just warming up, starting to talk.
Exactly.
Very outer layer of the onion here.
Exactly right. So, where did you travel from? What are you majoring in? Right. All that good stuff. So we'll get that done pretty quick. The next thing then that I'm going to do is turn them loose on a series of really odd word puzzles, which are, so for example, it says 26 DIAY. Or I'm sorry, I just messed that up. 26 isn't the number I want. 356 DIAY.
DIAY.
So it's days in a year.
Days. Oh,
326 would be.
Okay, I got it. So they need to figure that out. Okay.
Yeah. So 26 LIEA, letters in the English alphabet.
Okay. Okay.
And then they get a whole series of those, and they really do have to kind of pull on each other, because one person's going to know piano keys and another person's going to know players on a soccer team. And so they kind of come together and bring that. Then I put a little tupper on top of that with just a really quick no phones allowed trivia. And so also, again, gets them talking about what the story, kind of what their story is. How do you know that? And so there's a prompted at the end of each of these activities that is, what was the most surprising response somebody came up with, and find out how they knew that, find out where that came from. And because it's often just just a whole kind of, okay, I know this, right, when nobody else does. And the nice thing about everybody kind of being at sea is it's oftentimes your quieter people who surface it. So they'll come up with the one that nobody else got because they're the only one who plays piano. So 88 PK made sense to them for piano keys, but nobody else in the room
would have known. A non-piano player would have no clue. Oh, that's interesting.
So go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that might speak a little bit to the last comment that came in with the people dominating the discourse in an icebreaker or otherwise. Right. This one really solves for that in a lot of ways, because you can dominate all you want, but if you don't know how many keys are on a piano, you can't answer this. And then it's not your story to surface. So you're automatically getting a diversity of thought and conversation going. Let's circle back to that. I want you to finish talking about this event and how you're going to play it out. But I do want to come back to other facilitation tips, including how we deal with dominators that emerge even in icebreakers. But okay, so you've got this first layer is the very surfacey things. The next one are these cool word puzzles.
Yeah. So here's how, kind of learning a little bit about what you know and where you come from. And then the last sort of, again, remember, I only have 2 hours and there's a bunch of people. So, right. So then the last thing I'm going to ask them to do is have a debate. And so they've got a number of things. And I mean, they're really important topics, like, does pineapple belong on pizza?
Oh, really important topics.
Really important topics.
These are life and death things here.
They are. And they're all intended very much to be that kind of, but as you've got to find the one that the group disagrees on most vehemently. And I give them 5 or 6 of those. Which one does the group disagree on the most? And then how are you going to solve that? If the group as a whole has to come to consensus on this, you can only order one pizza and it's either going to have pineapple or it won't.
What are you going to do?
What are you going to do? And then we can talk about it. Well, did you just give up because it seemed too hard? Did you? And so how do you have the disagreement? Kind of what do you do when you have that sort of, I like pineapple. I don't like pineapple. What do we do? And how do we sort that out?
That particular exercise, I can see how they could integrate so many other team tools, or if they don't, it becomes a great point of conversation. So, for example,
Mhm.
did they rank or decide on their own the yes or no, or did they go through on, if you give them 5 debate topics,
Mhm.
do they individually rank order how strongly they feel about those first? Because that principle of
Mhm.
individually engaging with content before you as
Yeah.
a group discuss it. I mean,
Yep.
there's just hordes of research that says that
Yep.
strengthens our overall thinking as a group. And
Absolutely.
yet teams don't do it. They just automatically jump in. I see it happen at every faculty meeting I go to, every
I
student
know.
team that I watch. They just start talking,
Mhm.
usually with a dominator, as
Yeah.
our one LinkedIn user mentioned. And but there are all these simple tools. Like if
Mhm.
all we did first was say, okay, why don't we go through individually and
Yep.
rank these? And then during the discussion, did we have someone assigned to be sort of that devil's advocate that pushes back if someone, or an encourager, if someone is just sitting there seeming to give up and be like, yeah, okay, fine, put pineapple on the pizza. I don't care. This is
Mhm.
dumb. Anyway, they'd be like, no, wait, now Carolyn, if you don't like pineapple, then we really do want to hear your opinion. Those are such simple,
Mhm.
underutilized team tools
Yes.
that I think could all get sort of teased out of that simple exercise. I love it.
Exactly. Exactly, and that I glossed right by. They have to find the one on which they disagree the most. But what I do is give them. There's only 4 for this group, but yes or no, and how aggressively do you feel that way?
Yeah.
So it's funny because you do know that you can always divide a room pretty much in half on the pineapple on pizza thing, and I think we're doing that in our comment section right now.
They are. They're starting down that direction.
Oh yeah.
Amy wants to know if you gave any ground rules for the debate, other than that they had to rank order individually. Are there other ground rules?
They come in and say, all right, so let's put everything together as a team. Which one has the most, the biggest delta, right? What's our biggest vehement disagreement? And then everyone has to be considered. You have to come to a consensus that everyone can not just say they're okay with, but they have to give it a certain ranking. So on a scale of 1 to 5, everyone has to give it at least a 4. And they have to have generated 5 different potential outcomes before they can decide on one.
Okay, so there are some ground rules.
Yeah.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
great. And yes, and we're still getting comments on pizza, yes or
See?
pineapple, yes or no. You've really struck a chord here, Carolyn.
I know.
I think when Shelby and Natasha and I post in the post production, we're going to have pineapple conversations for sure on the posts. I know.
It's true.
Okay, I feel as though I'm asking like the question that you're not allowed to ask. If I have more than one child and you ask me which is my favorite, you're not allowed to ask that. If I know you have 2 beloved dogs, if I said which one is your favorite, it's the question you can't ask, but I'm going to ask it. What's your favorite icebreaker? And I will relent and say you can have more than one if it's in a different category. If you have one
Okay.
favorite for prompting problem solving, or one favorite for creativity, I will let you have more than one in different categories. But what do you
I
think?
love it.
Favorite for icebreakers?
I'm going to cheat just a little bit
Fair enough.
because what I like is actually one that's sort of a cafeteria. Pick what you'll do and move on. And so essentially the team has 15 minutes and they're given a number of different tasks that they can do that are worth a certain number of points. And their goal is to maximize the number of points they can get in 15 minutes. Right. So there's traditional stuff like come up with a nickname for everybody in the team, or
A team
figure
name.
out, a team name, a team song, and 5 points extra if you sing it. But be careful because Eye of the Tiger, when people are singing it, is often just really kind of awful. Form a conga line and 2 extra points if for every person who joins you.
Okay.
So just and there's a whole series of them. It's chaos. It's mass chaos. But I adore watching the team decide what they're going to do.
Oh.
And it really tells me a lot about the team, not just how many points they got, but did they play it safe? And so, of course, that's the debrief. So, Did you just decide you're going to do the stuff that was pretty straightforward? Did you decide you were going to do the one big ticket thing and go risky? And how did you figure that out? What does that tell you about the team? And so it's honestly, yes, I love watching the conga lines and the balloons and whatever else I bring that day. But my favorite part of it is watching them say, okay, how many points do we need and how are we going to do this? And I love that process because I think chaos is fun.
And what they learn about themselves and their team as a part of it. Because at the end of the day, I mean, yes, Icebreaker is about getting to know one another. So we create that psychological safety. And it's about understanding how we work better together. And when we do that, that is where those high performance teams really start to kick in. I love it. Oh my goodness, folks, I hope you got some good icebreaker ideas. If not, go watch Carolyn and Daisy's course in the LinkedIn library for a whole slew of additional icebreaker ideas for your teams. We are so grateful to all of you, first of all, for your patience while we worked through my technical problems, and for all of these great comments and thoughts and questions that you posed to us. These are awesome. This is just wonderful. I'll cursor back through the feed to make sure I didn't miss any questions that came in, especially while I was offline for a little bit. Carolyn, thank you so much for your wisdom, for your fun, for carrying the load for me. You're awesome. I knew you would be, yeah, this is just delightful. As I mentioned, the most in-demand skills include communication, and Tatiana and Kolovu and I have a communication foundations course that's being highlighted as a part of that campaign. So take a look at that one if you get a chance. I'll be back live for Learn Plus in March with my colleague, Professor Kathy Fisher. And I'll tell you more about what she and I are going to be discussing, but it's really about sort of social identity and understanding yourself and others better. So a really interesting piece coming up from Kathy in March to look forward to. So yes, Carolyn, once again, thank you so much. Learners, thank you. Good luck with your icebreakers. They are for a great cause. There's a lot of data behind it that supports it. And we wish you all the best of luck with your icebreakers. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.